When I began Paranormal Mysteries, I wanted to give you, the listeners, an informative look into the world of the paranormal. I wanted to bring you true stories that you may have otherwise never heard, and I wanted to do it in an unbiased and unassuming manner, in the hope that you would feel free to form your own conclusions. Over the past couple of years, I have tried my best to do just that, and all of you have given me the best gift that I could have ever hoped for, an open-minded and eager-to-learn audience. Thank you to all of you that have helped to support the podcast and make it what it is today. As we continue through 2019, I'll be bringing you more paranormal encounters from around the world, and I'm looking forward to hearing more of your stories as well. With that said, let's start the show.
The first time it happened, I was sleeping and woke up because I felt a hand on my leg, and I realized that I couldn't move.
And he come across this object on the ground, which was the shape of a flying saucer. So he jumped out of his pickup and went down there, and there was 4 beings laying on the ground.
When I raised my head back up, I was turning my head, and out of my peripheral vision, I seen something hop to a tree. And it was tall, about 7-8 foot tall, and it was black, real hairy, like a gorilla.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Nick Ryan, and this is episode 28. Before we discuss our main topic, I'd like to take just a minute to thank our newest patrons, Robin and Kathy. Thank you so much for your support. It is greatly appreciated. We'd also like to thank our newest 5-star reviewers on iTunes, GeForce 757575, Gypsy 2008, and Anastasia. Your positive reviews help others to find our show on Apple Podcasts. Thank you for your feedback. Today we have 4 different listener stories. Our first story comes from Dave in Connecticut, and his story is entitled, Spirit. Dave writes in and says, I have been investigating the paranormal for the past 20 years. In 2015, my grandfather passed from cancer. Last summer, I woke up around 2 a.m. to use the bathroom and saw my daughter sitting in the living room. I asked what she was doing up so late, and she told me she saw a black shadow with a white mist surrounding it, and was waiting for it to come back. I did not think anything of it because my daughter has the gift. She can see and talk to spirits. I went back to bed only to be awoken by my phone at 6 a.m. On the line was my mother, telling me that my grandmother also saw a black shadow with a white mist around it. My grandmother does not believe in ghosts or spirits, so for her to tell me this, she must have been very scared. I told her I would grab my team and check it out later because I had things to do that morning. Waking up, I put it together that both my daughter and my grandmother had seen the same thing at the same time, 20 miles apart. So I went about my day and arrived at the Leffingwell Inn House Museum, where I am the tour guide. I was there 10 minutes before I get a phone call that my mother had fallen at the casino and was being taken to the hospital. I arrived at the hospital. It was nothing too serious, so after making sure she was okay, I left with my daughter and cousin, who are part of my team. We are Arrowhead Paranormal, a Native American-based team. After setting up the basic equipment, my grandmother would have freaked out if we brought it all. We did our thing and got no readings on any of the equipment. My daughter came in and said that my grandfather was standing there and that he said he was trying to warn anyone that he could about my mother's fall. We packed up, and as we were leaving, I saw a deer in the backyard, which is impossible. I jumped out of my car to get my cousin's attention, and as the 3 of us looked up, there was a white mist leaving my grandmother's bedroom window and dissipating above it, only to turn around and see there was no deer in the yard. I believe it was my grandfather just letting us know he is still there. Dave, it definitely sounds like your grandfather is still watching over you. I hope your family is well, and I thank you for listening to the show and writing in. If you have any other experiences that you'd like to share, please feel free to contact us. Our next story comes from Chris in England, and his encounter is entitled The Haunting. Chris says, I have just found your podcast on Spotify, and I thought I would share a story of my own. I have never told this to anyone else other than close friends and family. I live near Liverpool, England. It started around 14 years ago. I was 17 at the time and working in a sports store that sold sports clothes, football, soccer kits, and trainers, etc. This store was located in a basement in a busy town shopping center. While I say it was a basement, it wasn't as creepy as it might sound. It was a large store, well lit and busy with 15 or so staff. I worked in the shoe department, fetching people's sizes and restocking. I had been employed for probably 6 months, with nothing out of the ordinary and ill feeling at all. Slowly things started to change. The first strange thing I noticed was when I was in back of the store, where there are many rows of shelving racks of shoe boxes. I was price checking when I heard a loud tumble of boxes falling off a shelf. Thinking someone had dropped them, I checked around, smiling as I went. I found a stack of boxes on the floor, but with no one around. I didn't think much of it at the time. This happened a few more times over a couple of weeks. Boxes falling, weird shuffling noises, and the feeling there became dark, like a cloud had descended. The air felt thick. Depression seemed to seep from the walls, and a general uneasy feeling hung in the air, which got worse as time went on. The next major development was again in the same area with the racks. I heard a small object fall and hit the floor. There was a delay of a few seconds, then an almighty screeching alarm rang out, which was so loud, piercing my ears. I ran to the source of the noise, and found a small black plastic box, the size of a matchbox. I couldn't stop the noise, and the only button on it seemed to do nothing. The noise actually hurt my ears, being so close to it, so I ended up stamping on it to smash it up to stop the wailing alarm. When I got home, I searched the internet to try and find out what the strange box was. Turns out it was a rape alarm, used to deter would-be attackers. I have no idea where it came from. It seemed to fall out of the air with no trace of origin. Freaked out by the recent events, I spoke to my colleagues who said they had also experienced similar strange things and feelings, and it was a hot topic in work for quite a while. I used to work with a guy called Paul. He was similar in age to me and worked in the same area. He had scruffy kind of hair with a short scruffy beard to match. One day I was again working in the back storeroom lacing up the trainers, when through the racking I saw Paul out of the corner of my eye. I am pretty sure it was Paul, due to the scruffy beard and hair. However, I asked him a question about stock levels, to which there was no reply. I asked again, but still silence. He just stood there staring at me. I would say he was motionless, but it was more than that. He was perfectly still, like a cardboard cutout. I clearly remember feeling weirded out by the stillness, like time had stopped and he was frozen. I walked toward him, confused as to why he didn't say anything, but as I got closer, he disappeared. A cold shudder flashed over me, and I ran out onto the shop floor as fast as I could. I then saw Paul making his way over from the far end of the store. This did not ease any feeling I had, as it was clearly impossible to get from the back room through the only door and to the other side of the shop. I thought that my workplace was haunted until these strange things started to happen to me at home as well. It began with typical things of unexplained bumps and bangs, but it soon escalated. One such time was during the middle of the night. My girlfriend at the time was staying over. It was about 2 a.m., and we were both just about to drift off to sleep when an almighty bang rocked the house. I immediately jumped up and ran down the stairs, thinking someone was trying to kick my door in. I checked the full house and outside, front and back, but all was clear. Jump forward a few weeks, and my brother was visiting and sat on the sofa. It was one of those single cedar leather chairs that spun and reclined. He jumped up suddenly, which caused the chair to spring back hard into the wall behind. The house rocked with a large bang, and both me and my girlfriend turned our heads and looked at each other in fear. The sound that he had made when getting up from the chair sounded identical to what we had heard that night at 2 a.m. Another time was midday. My parents were both at work, and we were alone, or so I thought. I heard somebody slowly walking up the stairs. I turned confused and looked at my girlfriend. She said, "I thought your parents were out." I said, "They are," and nervously opened the bedroom door, scared it might be an intruder. As soon as the footsteps reached the top of the stairs, I flung open the door to nobody there. By this time, I had been dealing with this for probably about a year. It had become normal, and my fear of it had dwindled. I started to find it funny and a bit freaky, but ultimately harmless. The last day this occurred was especially active in the morning. I had eaten my cereal and left the bowl on the kitchen table while I went to the bathroom. When I came back, my spoon was standing upright in the bowl, slowly spinning. I stood and watched it, amazed, for 10 seconds or so, until it fell into the bowl with a loud clang. I laughed nervously, but now found it fascinating and funny rather than scary. For the rest of the day, there was various bangs and objects moving locations. This happened regularly, so I didn't think anything much about it. That night, my girlfriend stayed over again. While in bed with the lights off, only the light from the streetlights lit up the bedroom through the curtains. We were talking about our day and general chit-chat, when she said to me in a shaky, clearly terrified voice, "Can you see that black cloud?" I looked up and saw a black mass floating above our bed. The only way I can describe it was an area above me that seemed to have a lack of light, like some sort of black hole that sucked the life out of the air. The temperature in the room dropped considerably as the blackness above me morphed and changed shape, slowly pulsating. I had a massive feeling of dread and sorrow as I stared at the cloud. I don't know how or why, but a switch inside me seemed to flip, and the fear went in an instant. Looking back, I said the dumbest thing ever as I raised my hand into the cloud. In the most deadpan and bored-sounding voice, I said, "Wow, that's weird, isn't it?" The cloud quickly dissipated, the room warmed up, and from that moment, I never saw or heard anything strange again. This experience is 100% true from my perspective. I had never seen anything like it before and haven't seen anything since. I don't for sure know what it was. I can only speculate on the events, but I think my dwindling lack of fear and my reaction in the later part of it maybe caused it to leave. Possibly it was getting bored, or my fear wasn't a good enough meal to stick around for. Sharing my story might help others who experience something similar, and maybe the key to getting rid of things is to suppress your fear and instead find it comical. Any questions I'd be happy to answer. Thanks for listening, and for your awesome show, Chris. Chris, thank you so much for writing in. I'm glad to hear that your encounters have stopped. Please let me know if you experience any other activity, and please be safe. Black masses are nothing to take lightly, but perhaps your lighthearted perspective did indeed cause the phenomenon to stop. Hopefully it stays that way. Thanks again for listening to the show, and please take care. Our next encounter comes from Jessica in Texas, and her encounter is titled Workplace Ghost Encounter. Jessica says, I had written in sometime in September of 2018 with a couple of incidents regarding my workplace. Thank you for taking the time to read and share them. One day at work, while in the restroom, I heard one of my coworkers say, "I think she's in the restroom." I assumed she was referring to me, since I was the only one in the private room. Heavy boots started down the hallway to where I was in the restroom. I think I recall the door handle being pressed down and then a knock on the door. "Yes?" I responded. I was astounded and a bit confused that someone was attempting to contact me in the restroom, let alone trying to open the door. Why wouldn't they just wait for me in my office, I thought. I didn't hear them leave. Afterwards, I asked everyone I could find if there was a man looking for me and if anyone had come upstairs toward the restroom. I asked the girl whose voice I thought I had heard if she had just told the man that I was in there. She denied saying anything and that she had witnessed a man upstairs. One of my coworkers said she hadn't seen anyone, but that she had heard a man's voice. This particular coworker had heard people talking the morning prior to this day while working alone upstairs. At the time of her experience, it was only she and another lady who were working. I inquired to this other lady, who also has experiences in the office, if anyone had entered the building looking for me or if anyone at all had entered the building during the time of my experience. She denied anyone entering the office building, as she would know because she is the one who lets people inside. Later, while talking to the young lady whose voice I thought I had heard, I discovered a note on my desk after returning to my office that read, "I'm in your office looking for you." The writing was in cursive, but it was childlike. It resembled that of my coworker, who had not entered my office during my conversation with the young lady. I know this because I was facing the hallway to my office when the note would have been placed on my desk. I laughed and played it off, to the joking of my coworker who had heard a man's voice when I had heard the footsteps. She denied any such activity. She actually got a bit angry and frustrated with me as I continued to jokingly accuse her of writing the note. The next morning I found another note on my desk that read, "Good morning, I'm still here." Again, I laughed loudly so that my coworker would know that I had received the note. It was old by this point, and I thought she had gone overboard. One note would have been enough, but I let her know that I had received it. She became visibly upset, denying any activity. I felt she was overreacting to cover the joke. I wondered why she couldn't just admit that she had played a joke and laugh about it with me. Her unease made me feel uncomfortable, because I wanted to believe her, but was convinced that she had taken the joke so far that maybe she had convinced herself that she hadn't written the notes. I was confused too, because this was out of character for her to joke like this, even though I had convinced myself otherwise. She even brought up the fact that she never jokes like that, and has never done so in the past 3 years that we've worked together. She had a valid point, but joking has to start somewhere. Why not now, I thought. I convinced myself that everyone was involved in a joke about me until I realized how absurd that was. After a day or two, I resigned to the fact that I would never really know what happened, and that if I kept trying to figure it out, I would drive myself crazy. Jessica, thank you for writing in and sharing yet another one of your strange encounters. To me, it almost sounds as if something is trying to start an argument between you and your coworkers. Please keep us posted if anything else happens around your office, and thanks again for being a long-time listener. Our fourth and final story today comes from Kelly in Florida, and this one is entitled, Strange and Scary Thing in the Window. Kelly says, I live in Florida, but before I moved down here, I lived in Minnesota with my parents. At the time, I was around 16 or 17 years old, and I had a small bedroom with a window right across from my bed. I had a dresser I put in front of the window, and half of a curtain covering the left side of the window because my dresser was not tall enough to completely cover the top. One night, I woke up and I was facing away from the window, but I could not move no matter how much I tried, and I felt very scared to the point that my body was getting hot. I stayed like that for close to an hour. Then all of a sudden, I could move again, and after a while I went back to sleep. But over the course of 6 months to a year, this continued to happen to me. More than a few times, I actually saw what was making me feel that way. And what I saw can only be described as a giant head and neck with very wide shoulders. I never saw it on nights with a full moon, and it never left tracks in the dirt, mud, or snow. There were times I tried to wake my parents up by yelling or hitting on their wall if I could, but they never woke up till morning. That's not the only thing that has happened to me or my parents' house, but since I moved to Florida, I haven't had any recent happenings, but I have other stories of things that I've experienced. Kelly, I appreciate you sharing your story with us. I'd be interested to learn if you could remember any other details about the creature's appearance. We'd love to hear about your other experiences as well. I look forward to hearing from you in the future. Thanks for listening to the show. I love receiving personal accounts from our listeners. Hearing about others' experiences helps everyone to feel more connected and somehow comforted, I think, in this mysterious world we live in. Thank you again to Dave, Chris, Jessica, and Kelly for taking the time to share your personal encounters with us. That wraps it up for today's show. If you guys have any stories or questions that you'd like to contact me with, you can do so at paranormalmysteriespodcast@gmail.com, or you can visit paranormal-mysteries.com. You can also get involved by joining our forum and by following us on social media at Paranormal Mysteries Podcast. If you'd like to support the podcast, visit patreon.com/paranormal mysteries. You can also support the show by giving us a positive review over on iTunes. And while you're there, we'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe and share it with your friends. New episodes of the show are available on all of your favorite podcast apps, including Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. From all of us at Paranormal Mysteries, thank you for listening, and remember, don't wait for the unknown to come to you. Get out there and find it.